Welcome to our Canal Days video series, and thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Steiger buildings in Holyoke, Massachusetts. I'm your host, Carrie, here with my co-host, local historian and founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. As your personal tour guide, Robert will lead you through some of the most iconic sites and their legends of historic significance throughout New England's preeminent and pivotal state of Massachusetts. With his expert insights, every monument and memorial story comes to life. Afterwards, don't forget to check out his website, holyokecanaltour.org, to access the full Canal Days video and podcast series. Also, check out his free in-person public tours he offers throughout Western Mass and the 2025 schedule for these special events. You can also book personalized private tours for groups of all sizes, tailored to your interests. To discover all that and much more, remember to log on to holyokecanaltour.org. So, what year were these buildings constructed?
The Steiger's new building on High Street was constructed in the year 1899. He started in Holyoke in 1896, but 3 years later he moved to this location. That first location was the next block up at 215 High, but he moved into here in the 270, 280 ranges to start up an enormous business for himself. Now he would end up buying 2 blocks more to two structures more that will be attached to that original Steiger's, and one more upper to the north that would be also would have been attached to it, and he would buy the lot and back. So he would buy in 1920 the lot and back to make a parking lot because cars are more prevalent, and then he would buy or lease out in 1921 the Child's shoe store's upper 3 floors. Childs was getting away from the business school and going only selling shoes, so he bought out, and then he would buy out the Tabor building. Frank Tabor, the jeweler, had a place. He would buy that out, and then he'd buy out the Woolworth, and in fact that last purchase was the last one, and that was in 1954 after he died. The business bought that. In all cases they would change it over into the Beaux Art look. So we'll concentrate on what it looks like outside and how the architectural facade was changed over. This is Steiger's original building right here in front of us. Only two-thirds was the original, and I'll show you where it is. You see where the large window is on the left-hand side? That's not the original. The original was the 3 larger windows towards the rightmost or center, also going upwards, and you can see how they're just different from the other portion, upwards. And then look on the top, you see the shields with S's in the middle of them. Those are different S's from the one that's over. So this little distinction is giving away that something has happened. He's bought out his business to the left. He'd end up buying the business to the right, which was a Woolworth. Actually, the company bought it out since he was no longer alive. They bought out in 1954. Then they bought out the section to its immediate left in the year 1921, and then he would buy out the section after that in 1922 to that immediate left. Now look what he did to all 4 sections. He would change them into Beaux Art. So this is the original Beaux Art, and you can tell because those column pieces, 2nd and 3rd floor, all look very similar in the shield above, and there's no true break in the roof line up there. Right now the ground floor has been changed a little bit, but it also is symmetric. You can see that underneath columns 1 and 4 you have a similarity of look, and then the middle 2 columns have metallic post. So if you go over to the next one, the next one is showing you a little difference, and that's because the columns on the first floor has changed, right? The one on the leftmost is the same as the one that finished off the original structure. All right, and then the columns above are reasonably similar, except that I think the top of the column is slightly different look because it was made a few years afterwards. In fact, this structure was made 1899, and then this structure was made 1921. They tried to replicate it. They put the scroll of that upper column in the upper right corner and upper left corner at too much of an angle outwards compared to these. So there's a little difference. And then up on the 4th floor, I mentioned the S before inside the shield. The shield is taller and it's a little more bulky outwards. And then the adornments are slightly different from each other. All right, then there's definitely a crack appearing as you go from the original 2/3 on the right to the 1/3 on the left. There's a crack in the tablature up top, and then also one above the 3rd floor. And that's because they were made different times, and stress through the years starting to show, finally. And then also look at between the 2nd and 3rd floor. The design in these were circles, and over here, sure you have 2 circles, but in the middle you have a slanted rectangle, square. Okay, and it's a much wider fenestration or bay, right? Of course, that is the most obvious of all. The next piece that would go in would be this piece in 1922, soon thereafter. And here is drastically different from the piece to the right. Okay, he tried to make the columns look somewhat similar in size, but the adornments are very different, and the roof line on the top of the 4th floor is quite different. All right, but you can see that by then it was hard to replicate, and it was hard to find contractors that could do Beaux-Arts anymore by 1922. Okay, and then the next piece and the last piece was when they bought out the Woolworth. And here they tried to put another Beaux-Arts. By then, 1952 or 1850s in general, there was no one doing Beaux-Arts anymore, so they had to come up with as best a job as they possibly could. All right, so it's nothing like the original or the addition or even the grand last one to the far left. It's drastically different. All right, but at least they tried. In that way, at least they have a cohesive unit over all the parts of it. Maybe call it 4 parts. So that a cohesive unit would be called the Steiger block by the end, and by the beginning too. The Steiger building went to the Steiger block fairly soon on. Behind is the parking lot, still there. Right, and we're on High Street in Holyoke, at a very important place across from the City Hall itself. All right, thank you for coming along.